Hello everyone. Today I'd like to bring you back to the story of Tusan, a single mother. It is a deeply ordinary journey unfolding through slow, unhurried days, where life is not marked by dramatic upheavals, but by quiet worries, unspoken emotions, and a strength that is nurtured day by day. In each small moment, Tusan learns how to keep moving forward, being a mother while also becoming her own source of support, quietly preserving a simple yet meaningful sense of peace within everyday life. The news of Tusan's pregnancy reached Ha through an unexpected phone call late in the afternoon, a time when the light outside had already softened, the sun no longer harsh, but stretching into gentle streaks, slowing the rhythm of life around her after a long day. When the phone vibrated in her hand, Ha was still immersed in familiar thoughts, the everyday worries not yet put to rest. She had no idea that within just a few brief seconds, her emotions would shift onto a different path, deeper, more stirring. She answered almost out of habit, but from the very first moment, she sensed that something was different in the voice on the other end of the line. Tusan's voice was neither loud nor hurried, yet it carried a distinct rhythm of its own, a fragile blend of tension and happiness. It trembled slightly, as if she were trying to remain composed, struggling to contain the emotions rising within her. She spoke slowly, each word carefully chosen, as though every sentence carried a weight heavy enough to make the listener pause and listen closely. In the soft pauses between her words, Ha could clearly feel the nervous anticipation interwoven with a joy being carefully held back, a joy not yet fully revealed, but undeniably present. Ha froze for the first few seconds, almost unable to respond right away. She stood still, her hand gripping the phone tightly, while the world around her seemed to recede into the background. The familiar afternoon sounds, voices, traffic, the movements of everyday life, suddenly felt distant and blurred. In that moment, only Tusan's voice remained vivid in Ha's mind, slow yet deeply affecting. She needed a brief moment of stillness to fully absorb the meaning of what had just been said, to allow her reason to catch up, and to give her emotions time to quietly seep in and spread. Then, almost by instinct, Ha smiled. It was not a loud or expressive laugh, but a gentle smile that surfaced from deep within, unhidden, unrestrained. That smile carried a sense of relief, mingled with a joy that felt genuine and pure. A warm sensation began to spread through her heart, slowly yet unmistakably, like a soft wave touching every corner of her emotions. In that moment, Ha felt a joy that was quiet but complete, a joy that softened her heart, stilled her thoughts, and gradually filled her with a warmth that was difficult to put into words. Ha whispered softly, her voice so quiet it was almost meant only for herself, more like a private thought than words spoken aloud. So, Tusan is going to be a mother. The sentence emerged gently, so fragile it seemed to dissolve into the stillness around her. Yet it was precisely that softness that allowed it to sink deeply into Ha's heart, weaving its way through the thoughts and emotions settling within her. In that brief moment, she did not rush to react, nor did she try to rein in her feelings. She simply let her imagination drift naturally, as if her mind were opening itself to welcome a warm vision of what lay ahead. Ha froze for the first few seconds, almost unable to respond right away. She stood still, her hand gripping the phone tightly, while the world around her seemed to recede into the background. The familiar afternoon sounds, voices, traffic, the movements of everyday life, suddenly felt distant and blurred. In that moment, only Tusan's voice remained vivid in Ha's mind, slow yet deeply affecting. She needed a brief moment of stillness to fully absorb the meaning of what had just been said, to allow her reason to catch up, and to give her emotions time to quietly seep in and spread. Then, almost by instinct, Ha smiled. It was not a loud or expressive laugh, but a gentle smile that surfaced from deep within, unhidden, unrestrained. That smile carried a sense of relief, mingled with a joy that felt genuine and pure. A warm sensation began to spread through her heart, slowly yet unmistakably, like a soft wave touching every corner of her emotions. In that moment, Ha felt a joy that was quiet but complete, a joy that softened her heart, stilled her thoughts, and gradually filled her with a warmth that was difficult to put into words. Ha whispered softly, her voice so quiet it was almost meant only for herself, more like a private thought than words spoken aloud. So, Tusan is going to be a mother. The sentence emerged gently, so fragile it seemed to dissolve into the stillness around her. Yet it was precisely that softness that allowed it to sink deeply into Ha's heart, weaving its way through the thoughts and emotions settling within her. In that brief moment, she did not rush to react, nor did she try to rein in her feelings. She simply let her imagination drift naturally, as if her mind were opening itself to welcome a warm vision of what lay ahead. Ha pictured Tusan in the days to come, no longer alone, no longer carrying everything on her own as she once had. She saw her younger sister being loved by Hai with patience and steadiness, without display or noise, but with a presence that felt solid and real. It was a kind of love expressed through small things, attentive glances, gentle reminders, being there at exactly the right moments. In that stream of thought, the image of Tusan being cared for by Hai's mother appeared clearly and warmly, asked about her meals, looked after in her sleep, treated like a daughter within the family. Everything felt natural, deserved, and quietly reassuring, softening Ha's heart. These images brought Ha a profound sense of peace. She realized that the journey ahead for Tusan, though filled with change, would not be a lonely one. A feeling of relief slowly spread through her, gentle yet unmistakable, as if an unspoken worry had finally been set down. Ha felt happy for her sister with a quiet joy, one that did not need to be spoken, did not need witnesses. That happiness lived silently in her eyes, in her breathing, in the subtle warmth spreading within her. It was the happiness of someone standing in the background, quietly watching a loved one be placed in the right place, within the right arms, under the right protection. And yet, in a very deep corner of Ha's heart, a fragile feeling brushed softly against her emotions. It arrived lightly, indistinct, not strong enough to be named, passing through like a thin breeze. It was not envy, nor a sadness heavy enough to make her falter or look away. It was simply a very quiet, very human wish, that one day, she too might be loved just as fully, sheltered with the same sense of peace, cared for not out of obligation, but out of sincere affection. A simple wish, resting silently in her heart, asking for nothing, urging nothing, existing only as a small hope she held for herself. The relationship between Ha and Hong's mother still carried a distance that was difficult to name, a distance not expressed through words or any specific actions, yet quietly present every time they were together. It did not resemble tension, nor was it marked by conflicts or misunderstandings that would make one feel guarded or defensive. Their conversations flowed smoothly enough, with polite inquiries and gentle, well-mannered replies. Everything felt calm, proper, and orderly, without causing discomfort or unease. Yet it was precisely this calmness that made the distance more elusive and harder to grasp. It was not a distance born of coldness or indifference, but one shaped by prolonged restraint. Ha sensed clearly that something delicate was still missing between them, a sense of closeness deep enough for her to truly relax, to simply be herself. When she was with Hong's mother, Ha always maintained a certain carefulness. She spoke slowly, chose her words thoughtfully, and made sure her emotions did not cross beyond the safe boundaries of propriety. She was not yet able to share her most private thoughts, her quiet worries, or the vulnerable emotions she usually kept to herself. Those feelings seemed to remain tucked away, not yet ready to be placed between the two of them. It was not that Ha did not want to open up, but rather that she had not found a clear enough signal to know that she could do so without fear of being misunderstood or disturbing the fragile balance that existed. To Ha, Hong's mother remained a respected elder, a woman firmly positioned within the family, carrying with her a sense of seriousness and the natural distance of generational roles. Ha respected her and listened to her, yet she could not quite see her as an emotional anchor, someone she could turn to when she felt tired, vulnerable, or in need of comfort without explanation. She was not close enough to feel instinctively sheltered, to experience the warmth of being held within a deeply bonded, unconditional relationship. That distance did not cause any obvious pain, nor did it make Ha feel anxious or overtly sad. It existed quietly and steadily, like a small empty space resting between two people. A space that made no noise, demanded no immediate filling, yet was enough for Ha to recognize that between familiarity and true closeness, there was still a stretch of road left untraveled. Close enough to see one another, familiar enough not to feel like strangers, yet still far enough that their emotions could not fully reach each other. That evening, when the house had settled into its familiar quiet after a long day, Ha slowly told Hong about Tusan's phone call. The space around them softened as the daytime noise seemed to retreat, leaving only the pale yellow glow of the lamp and two people sitting side by side in a deeply personal stillness. Ha did not speak quickly, nor did she try to explain too much. She simply recounted the details in a straightforward way, yet her voice still carried the lingering echoes of the afternoon, the sudden surprise, the genuine surge of joy, and the vague stirrings of emotion she herself had not yet found words for. When she spoke of the moment she learned that Tusan was pregnant, Ha's voice dipped slightly. Her eyes softened, as if the memory remained intact within her, untouched by time. It was not merely happiness she felt, but a profound emotion that came from witnessing a major turning point in the life of someone she loved. As she spoke, Ha quietly relived the feelings that had passed through her, gentle, sincere, and deeply human. Hong listened to her with complete attention. He did not interrupt, nor did he rush to offer comments or comfort. He simply sat there, leaning slightly toward her, allowing Ha the space to say everything that rested in her heart. His silence did not make her feel empty. Instead, it brought a sense of respect and understanding. When Ha finally paused, as though she had said all that needed to be said, Hong gently reached for her hand. His hand was warm and steady, touching hers in a way that felt entirely natural, unhurried, and unassuming. It was a familiar gesture, yet enough for Ha to feel his solid presence beside her. In a low voice, Hong said that time would help things gradually change, that the distances still unnamed, the awkwardness and separations yet unresolved, would all find a way to soften. He spoke of time as something that did not need to be forced or controlled, only accompanied with patience, allowing everything to settle into its own place. His voice was calm and measured, carrying an easy trust in what had yet to come. Ha nodded lightly. She did not say anything more, but that nod held many emotions, listening, agreement, and a quiet sense of comfort. In that moment, she realized she did not need to explain herself or be strong as she so often tried to be. Just having Hong beside her, listening and holding her hand, was enough to soothe her heart, enough to remind her that she was not alone with these deeply personal thoughts. Deep within Ha's heart, her joy for Tusan remained whole, untouched by time or mixed with other feelings. It was the pure, sincere happiness of a sister, of someone close, knowing that her loved one was stepping into a new journey surrounded by love and protection. And somewhere within her, very softly, a small hope was quietly taking root, unhurried, unobtrusive, simply present. A hope that everything would gradually become gentler, that she herself would also find changes subtle enough to accept and steady enough to believe in, like a tender shoot growing silently, not needing immediate results, only to be nurtured by time. And a few days later, Ha and Hong went into the forest together to clear the land, preparing to expand the cultivation area as they had planned earlier. That morning, the sun was harsher than usual. Unfiltered sunlight poured directly onto the newly cleared patches of ground, quickly heating the earth and making the air feel heavy and stifling. Heat rose from the soil, mingling with the scent of dry grass and the sharp, earthy smell of the forest floor, wrapping the space in a sense of harshness and fatigue. After only a short while of working, sweat had already soaked through their shirts, clinging to the skin, and each breath became more labored under the intense sun and the deep, characteristic silence of the forest. Ha continued to work as she always did, making no outward sign of exhaustion. She gripped the machete and bent down to clear away small trunks and tangled roots, patch by patch. Her movements remained steady and familiar, as if her body had long been accustomed to such physical labor. Yet after a short time, she began to feel a distinct change within herself. A quiet dizziness crept in, at first so faint it felt like nothing more than a passing discomfort. But it did not fade. Instead, it grew steadily stronger, spreading through her body. Sincerity. Her vision began to blur. Tree trunks, patches of earth, and streaks of sunlight filtering through the canopy tilted and smeared together, as though veiled by a thin mist. She paused, trying to steady herself, trying to stay calm, but her strength no longer obeyed her will. Her legs grew heavy, her head spun, and her breathing became uneven, leaving her unable to take another step. Ha hurried to lean against a nearby tree to keep her balance. Her back pressed against the rough bark, a brief coolness passing through her, though it was not enough to drive away the rising dizziness. Her breaths came heavy and quick, each one seeming to require effort. For a few short seconds, her mind went blank, leaving only the unmistakable sensation of swaying weakness. Before she could call out, Hong had already sensed that something was wrong. Noticing that Ha had stopped for too long and that her posture had tilted unnaturally, he rushed over in alarm. Worry was clear on his face when he saw her leaning against the tree, her complexion pale. Without hesitation, he supported her, guiding her carefully step by step, and helped her sit down to rest beneath the shade of a large nearby tree. There, the sunlight softened and the air grew a little cooler, enough for Ha to slowly catch her breath and feel the quiet yet steady protection of the person beside her. Ha reassured herself that it was probably nothing more than the harsh sun and overexertion. She was used to this kind of fatigue, accustomed to her body occasionally responding sluggishly after long, physically demanding days. On the way home, she deliberately pushed aside the lingering discomfort, telling herself that a bit of rest and a proper meal would be enough to set everything right. She walked slowly, said nothing more to Hong, and did not want him to worry over symptoms that even she herself did not yet understand. Her thoughts drifted quietly, blending into the sound of footsteps and the steady rhythm of her breathing. Yet once she arrived home, Ha realized that the feeling had not faded as she had hoped. On the contrary, it followed her persistently, clinging to every small movement, every ordinary moment. She stepped into the kitchen with the intention of preparing a meal, but the instant the scent of hot oil rose from the pan, a sudden wave of discomfort struck. That day, the smell seemed sharper and more pungent than usual, unsettling her stomach and tightening her throat. In a brief moment, nausea surged unexpectedly, forcing her to turn away quickly and take deep breaths to keep herself from panicking. Ha stood still for a few seconds, one hand lightly gripping the edge of the table as if searching for a familiar anchor. The discomfort spread through her body, not overwhelming, but clear enough that it could not be ignored. For the first time in many days, she felt her own body grow unfamiliar, as though it were sending out very subtle, very personal signals that she was not yet ready to understand or accept. In that moment, a vague thought flickered through her mind. It came quickly and lightly, like a blurred shadow passing by, yet it was enough to make her heart sink ever so slightly. To appear normal, but the effort did not escape Hong's notice. He quickly sensed that something was off, from the way Ha sat more quietly than usual to the hesitant way she picked up her chopsticks, only to set them down again. He watched her with visible concern, his eyes following her every small movement. He asked gently, his voice lowered, carrying an unease he tried to hide. But Ha only shook her head slightly, saying she was tired, that the sun had been too harsh that day, and her body had not yet recovered from her work in the forest. Her explanation was brief and soft, Hong did not press her. He simply picked out a few light, easy-to-eat dishes for her, placing them neatly in front of her, then sat in silence, watching. His care was unobtrusive and unforced, yet it was enough for Ha to feel the genuine worry and attentiveness behind it. That awareness warmed her heart, even as it stirred a vague, indescribable feeling within her. Ha lowered her gaze to the meal, to the untouched dishes, while her thoughts drifted elsewhere, far from the small kitchen and the unfinished dinner. In her mind, the image of Tusan announcing her pregnancy suddenly rose with striking clarity, as if that moment had just happened. She remembered Tusan's slightly trembling voice, the way joy was carefully restrained in each sentence, and the emotions that had welled up within herself upon hearing the news. That image carried with it a stream of mixed feelings quietly spreading through Ha's heart. There was a trace of worry, as though she were standing at a crossroads she had never prepared herself to face. Yet at the same time, somewhere deep within, a faint, fragile hope began to appear, threading its way through the confusion and unease. Ha did not dare to think any further, did not dare to let that thought grow into something concrete or become a clear affirmation. She only knew that this feeling was not random. It both frightened her and made her heart stir in a way that felt entirely different, entirely new. Like a gentle whisper from life itself, unhurried, uninsistent, quietly knocking, waiting until Ha would be calm enough, brave enough, to listen and face it fully. That night, Ha couldn't sleep. She lay still in the darkness, listening to the rhythm of her own breathing, yet the more she tried to close her eyes, the more alert her mind became. Images from the day surfaced slowly, one after another, quiet, but persistent, leaving her unable to relax and drift into sleep as she usually did. The fatigue was still there, yet sleep refused to come, as if her body and mind were somehow out of sync. Ha slowly sat up and reached for the phone beside her. The screen lighting up in the dark made her squint for a moment. She opened the calendar and began counting the days again, carefully and unhurriedly, as though afraid she might miss something. Familiar numbers appeared, pulling a trail of recent memories with them. The more she counted, the more she recognized signs that had been present over the past days, feeling tired more easily than usual, even without long hours of work, evenings when sleepiness came strangely early, and a heightened sensitivity to the smell of food, especially oily or sharp scents. Each of these small signs, so easy to overlook, so easily explained away as ordinary exhaustion, now stood out with striking clarity. Ha paused, her hand still gripping the phone, a heaviness settling in her chest. She realized these changes hadn't appeared just in the past day or two. They had been quietly accompanying her for a while, only she had never truly paid attention to them. In that moment, Ha suddenly remembered something Tusan had once said to her, her voice back then soft and sincere. At the time, I just felt different. The words echoed clearly in Ha's mind, as if Tusan were sitting right beside her. She remembered how she had felt hearing that, thinking it was simply a vague, personal sensation belonging to someone in the midst of it. But now, standing in that same place herself, Ha understood that the difference Tusan had spoken of didn't have to be something obvious or definite. Sometimes it was made up of very small, very ordinary changes, clear enough for the person experiencing them to feel, yet too subtle to name right away. Ha set the phone down and lay back on the bed. In the quiet darkness of the late night, her heart beat a little faster. She didn't dare confirm anything, nor was she ready to face a clear answer. But deep inside, Ha knew she was standing before an important moment, one where familiar signs were slowly arranging themselves into a clearer shape, and where a thought she had long avoided was quietly becoming impossible to ignore. The next morning, while the house was still wrapped in the quiet of early dawn, Han was sleeping soundly, his breathing slow and even in the stillness. Ha woke silently, carefully sitting up from the bed as if even the smallest movement might disturb that fragile calm. She moved with extreme quiet, each step placed so lightly it barely made a sound. Every motion was slow and restrained, as though she were passing through a deeply sensitive moment of her own, where any noise might feel too loud. The morning light had only just begun to slip through the window, soft and muted, not bright enough to reveal everything clearly, yet sufficient for Ha to find the familiar path leading to the bathroom. The house in the early hours carried a different kind of stillness, unhurried and hushed, as if it were holding its breath with her. She closed the bathroom door behind her gently, leaving the shared space outside, and also leaving behind a silence she was not yet ready to share with anyone, not even Hong. Inside the small bathroom, Ha stood still for a long moment. She did nothing at first, only taking a few deep breaths, trying to steady herself, to slow her breathing and her heartbeat just a little. But her heart continued to beat faster than usual, each thump clear and heavy in her chest. The silence no longer felt calming. Instead, it made every emotion sharper, more pronounced. When she held the test stick in her hand, Ha realized that her fingers were trembling, undeniably so. The trembling came not only from nervousness, but from a very quiet, very deep fear, the fear of facing the answer that was waiting. It was an answer she both worried about and secretly longed for, even if she had not yet dared to admit that to herself. The test stick was no longer an ordinary object. It carried too much meaning, enough to make her slow down with every small movement. Ha followed each step carefully and deliberately, as if every action required thoughtful consideration. She did not allow herself to rush, nor did she let emotion overwhelm the fragile calm she was trying to hold onto. In that moment, everything seemed to demand absolute stillness, no sound, no speculation, no hurried conclusions. When she finished, Ha placed the test stick gently on the edge of the sink, almost cautiously. She turned her back immediately, unable to look at the result right away. Her back rested lightly against the cool bathroom door, the chill seeping through her thin clothing and sending a faint shiver through her body. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the emotions rising within her pass quietly, unnamed, uncontrolled. It was only a brief span of time, yet to Ha it felt heavy and stretched. She stood there, balanced on the fragile line between waiting and change, between what was familiar and what might soon be different forever. Only when she turned back to look at the result would she know which side she would step into, but for now, Ha needed just one more moment, simply to stand still and breathe. Two lines appeared clearly, parallel, and unmistakably bold, resting on the test like an answer that could not be denied. In that moment, Ha froze. She stood completely still, her eyes fixed on the result before her, as if her mind needed more time to fully grasp the meaning of what she was seeing. All sounds around her seemed to disappear. The world narrowed until there was only the pounding of her heartbeat and the heat spreading through her chest. Then the tears came. Without warning, without restraint. Ha broke down, her shoulders trembling softly in the quiet of the early morning. These were not tears of fear or confusion, but tears born of a happiness too great, too sudden, so overwhelming that she had no choice but to let it pour out. All the worries, doubts, and vague thoughts that had lingered over the past days were suddenly soothed, giving way to a fullness and warmth that caught in her throat. Then Hong stepped forward and pulled Ha into a tight embrace. His arms wrapped around her firmly, not hurried, but instinctive, as if he wanted to hold her as close and as securely as possible in that unforgettable moment. His body trembled faintly, not from worry, but from the sheer weight of emotion. He lowered his head, resting his forehead against her shoulder, his breathing growing heavier as he struggled to contain the surge of feelings rising within him. Hong whispered, his voice deep and hoarse with emotion. They were not elaborate words, just a sentence spoken from the very bottom of his heart. He thanked her, thanked Ha for giving him a family. In those words lived joy, deep gratitude, and a sense of completeness, as though from that instant on, his life had taken on a new and unmistakable meaning. Ha rested her head against Hong's chest, allowing his arms to hold her. Tears fell again, but this time they were warm, peaceful tears. In that gentle silence, they needed no further words. The tight embrace alone was enough to say that from this moment forward, neither of them stood alone anymore. They were stepping together into a new journey, one where love, responsibility, and happiness were quietly beginning to take shape. A few days later, Ha and Hong went to visit Tusan. The meeting unfolded in a simple way, true to the rhythm of their everyday lives, no elaborate preparation, no prior notice, no sense of a happy announcement waiting to be revealed. Tusan's home was just as it always was, quiet and warm, filled with the familiar scent of daily living. Soft light filtered in from outside through the window, spreading gently across the room and making the space feel slower, softer, as if everything were subtly adjusting itself to this moment. Ha sat beside Tusan, listening as she spoke about ordinary things, small daily tasks, the subtle changes she had begun to notice in herself. Ha maintained her usual calm demeanor, her gaze gentle as it rested on Tusan, yet inside she carried a very private, carefully held emotion. It was something she had not yet put into words, something she did not quite know how to begin sharing, so she simply kept it close to her heart, allowing it to exist quietly. Then, in a moment that felt entirely natural, almost unintentional, Ha lifted her hand and rested it lightly on her belly. The gesture was slow and soft, more instinctive than deliberate. She was not trying to draw attention, nor was she attempting to communicate anything. Yet it was precisely this unforced simplicity that made the moment unmistakably clear. Tusan noticed immediately. Her gaze paused for a brief second, then settled fully on Ha's gesture. It was only an instant, but it was enough for understanding to spread through the silence. Tusan's eyes softened, deepened, as if she had just touched upon something profoundly important. Ha did not need to explain, nor did Tusan need to ask. A fleeting glance, a barely perceptible pause, was enough for both women to realize that they were standing at the same threshold in life, a place where emotions become fragile and sacred. Tusan smiled. It was not a bright, exuberant smile, but a gentle, grounded one, carrying the natural empathy of someone who fully understands what has just been discovered. She, too, lifted her hand to her belly, mirroring Ha's slow and careful movement, then softly placed her hand over Ha's. The touch was light and brief, yet it created an invisible bond between them. The two women looked at each other in silence. Their gazes were quiet but warm, filled with an understanding that needed no words. There were no congratulations, no outward display of emotion, only the gentle realization that they were sharing the same journey, the same fragile yet hopeful feeling. They placed their hands on each other's bellies, two small, tender gestures carrying immense meaning. Two heartbeats, two tiny lives quietly taking shape, coexisting within a single, gentle, sacred moment. Time seemed to slow, the space around them settling to make room for that feeling to spread. No one needed to say anything more, because the silence was not empty. It was filled with a quiet joy, a deep sense of connection, and the shared warmth of two women preparing to step into motherhood together. You're not walking this road alone anymore. Tusan spoke very softly, her voice low and unhurried, as if afraid that speaking any louder might cause the fragile moment to dissolve. The sentence carried no outward display of emotion, yet within it lay the weight of a long journey behind her, months of worry, of managing on her own, of a quiet loneliness that had once followed her closely. As she spoke, Tusan's eyes softened. The guarded tension she once carried was gone, replaced by the genuine relief of someone who had just realized she now had a place to lean on. Ha looked at Tusan and smiled gently. She lightly squeezed her sister's hand, as if answering without the need for much thought, and said slowly, "Neither am I." Those two simple words settled into the quiet of the house, brief, unadorned, yet complete. They were not only an expression of empathy, but a quiet acknowledgement that both of them were standing at the threshold of a new chapter in life, a place where worries still existed, but no longer felt as heavy when shared. In that moment, they were no longer two separate women carrying different burdens, but two mothers-to-be, stepping together onto a path filled with change and hope. Inside the warm, peaceful house, soft light wrapped itself around everything, and time seemed to slow in order to preserve the moment. The two women sat side by side, needing no further words. Through their simple presence, the gentle clasp of hands, and the quiet exchange of glances, they shared a deeply personal joy, one that was not loud or showy, but calm and enduring. It was the joy of women preparing to become mothers, quietly sensing the small life growing within them each day and believing together that from here on, the road ahead would feel less lonely because they now had each other to walk it with, quietly, without fanfare. Everything unfolds so gently that, without a moment of true stillness, one might easily miss it. There are no grand declarations, no moments that make emotions burst forth dramatically. Only the quiet presence of a trust slowly taking shape, slipping naturally into everyday life without needing to be named. It is a beginning that feels deeply real. A beginning not marked by brilliance or spectacle, but by emotions that are calm, sincere, and deeply rooted. Here, love is not loud but enduring, responsibility is not heavy but naturally present, and hope is not sharply defined, yet warm enough to soothe the heart. All of it exists side by side, growing slowly with each passing day, with every breath, within the smallest moments of ordinary life. No one rushes to imagine a distant future, nor tries to sketch a perfect outcome. It is enough to know that from this moment on, everything is beginning in the way that feels most right for them, quiet, steady, and full of trust. A beginning that needs no proof, only to be nurtured through genuine care, understanding, and love, so that with time, it can grow on its own, whole, grounded, and complete.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Mình đang edit video nha, mình vẫn đang cố gắng để có thể hoàn thành video sớm. Hôm nay thì mình làm việc hơi muộn tí. Bây giờ mình đang đặt tên video. Cảm ơn mọi người rất là nhiều vì đã xem video của mình. Tạm biệt mọi người.